Okay, I'm going to be doing a video here, an interview with Brother Eric John Phelps, and really want to do this to get the body of Christ to know about the fact of the presence of the Jesuits. I've talked about them for many years, and Brother Eric here is, I would say, probably the expert on the Jesuit order. And I guess we'll start out here real quick with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I just pray that our time here would be well used of you, Lord, that we would be able to bring you glory through this and be able to warn the body of Christ about a very serious threat that it's getting more and more powerful, and a lot of people are very ignorant about it. And I just pray, Lord, that you would be here in our midst, and I ask it all in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Real quick, if you want to just tell us your testimony, how you came to know the Lord, and how you came to hear about the Jesuit order.
Yeah, I was raised an atheist, pro-communist. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents were communists, and my maternal grandparents were apostate Protestants, and my parents were apostate Protestants. So I never heard the gospel. Never was ever taken to church, except maybe for Easter, when I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And when I was 17, I was confronted with the gospel. One of my friend's brothers was saved, and his brother was different, and he was this killer guy on the football team. His name was Steve Hirschman, and I knew his brother Greg, and so I went over to see Greg and studied Steve, and I saw that he was very different. We had the Bible, and I was shocked. So one thing led to another, and I was given the gospel, and I got hurt my leg in my knee, and while I was in my bed reading the Gospel of John, I was saved, reading, Christ died for my sins, and was buried and rose again, and believed that there, reading the Gospel of John in my bed. So I was about 17 that time. It was back in 1971, and later that year, when I graduated, I went to the Air Force, spent almost 5 years in the Air Force, and worked in churches off base. It was in a church off base in Spangdahlem, Germany. It was an Air Force base where the Air Force people went, because they couldn't meet on the chapel because it was so apostate. And so that's what I did there, and came back, went to Bible college, Lancaster Bible College, for Baptist Bible College in Clark Summit. It was a GARBC school. And then 2 years at Lancaster Bible down here in Lancaster, which is apostate, having departed from the Reformation Bible. Both of them had.
Right.
And but then when I was, way back when I was 10 years old, I was fourth grade when Kennedy was shot. And that deeply affected me, and I thought, I need to find who did that. Because I knew LBJ was a liar, and he was taking his swearing in, he was obviously involved, and I perceived that at 10 years old. But then that stayed with me for a while. Then I was saved, went to Bible college. In Bible college, I found out that the Jesuits had killed Lincoln. And I had a teacher there, his name was Rembert Carter. He got his doctorate in history when he was like 24, 25, from Edinburgh in Scotland. So he was elite and considered himself so. But he did have a class on the assassination of Lincoln carried out by the Jesuits, and he had an original copy of Burke McCarty's work, The Suppressed Truth About the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. It was written in 1924. And this dear lady was saved. She'd been a Roman Catholic. She was saved, and then she spent 7 or 10 years researching the whole assassination of Lincoln and proved the Jesuits did it. And I have the book. You can get the book from Ozark Publishers, too. But, so it was the assassination of Lincoln, and then when I was in Bible college, the whole issue of the version issue came up. And, I had read, after I was saved, I read the NIV for a while, or the New American Standard, and there was something wrong with it.
Yeah.
So somebody said, and I didn't know anything about it, I just knew something was wrong with it. And somebody said, you need to read the King James. Well, I read that, and then I knew I was reading the Bible. And so I brought the King James with me when I went to Bible college, and they handed me Bruce Metzger's third edition of the Critical Text. What'd they do that for?
Yeah.
And I had all the footnotes and all that, where you can decide what's the scripture and what's not the scripture. And I said, if that's the case, I belong unsaved doing what I did before. If there's no final authority, there is no salvation.
Amen.
So I left Baptist Bible College and went to Lancaster Bible College. And of course, Baptist Bible was getting into extreme Calvinism, that Christ didn't die for the world, only for the elect, and things like that. And so I decided I was going to leave there and went to Lancaster. Well, that was jumping from out of the pot into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And they still had the same apostate Greek text. And I graduated from there in 1981. And I was in business for a while, doing concrete work. I did concrete work for 15 years. And I did health work for another 10 years in alternative health matters. And now I'm doing what I do now is I have my websites, Preach the Gospel, Expose the Jesuits, wrote the book. Finished my first treatise in 1999, Vatican Assassins, and then I put out another one in 2000, and my first book was 2001, the first edition. And my second edition was kind of a quickie little thing. Then the third edition that I have came out in 2007, and so I have 5 editions of the third edition, 5 printings of the third edition, which is 1,836 pages, 760 pictures and portraits. So it's about the history of the Jesuit order, and up to the present day, the Kennedy assassination and then 9/11, their involvement in that. So, meanwhile, I have my church here, I have a 24/7 World Radio, and then I have Vatican Assassins website, and teach my private citizenship class, which is teaching people how to be restored to their former status of a private citizen of the United States under Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. They are no longer deemed to be surety for an artificial person, the all caps name, which is a Roman Catholic entity. I teach you how to go back to that, be the private citizen, and use the all caps as an entity to interface in business with. And so I teach my course once a month, pardon me, and have one coming up this March.
No, great. Praise the Lord. Well, what I want to talk about here, I think, in this interview, I think it's important to understand for people. I mean, you said about your book, and I have a copy of it myself. I'm not sure which edition this one is, but I've had it for quite a few years. It might be the, would you say
that's the most recent one.
This one is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But, so if anybody out there wants to hear about the history of all the Jesuits and everything else, I recommend this. I've recommended it for a long time. But I think the thing that's most important for people to understand is the fact that the Jesuits are a military order. And because of that, they use a lot of military-type tactics. And it's, because I get this from atheists. They say, I'll come down on the Jesuits and the Catholics, and they say, well, it's just one religion versus another. And it's not.
Nope.
The Jesuits, they're more political than they are, religion to them is kind of a means to an end, so to speak.
That's right.
And it's, I'll ask you this question, brother. I mean, do you believe that there are any mainstream Protestant denominations that have not been thoroughly infiltrated by the Jesuits?
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
all World Council churches. World Council, National Council, it used to be Federal Council when the Rockefellers created it. I mean, Rockefellers are Jesuit codgers. They're papal knights. And so they managed to take in all the Protestant denominations that were once their enemies, that brought about successful revolutions against the temporal power of the Pope. So the Jesuits did this through their Scottish Rite Freemasonry. All your top Protestant leaders are some sort of Scottish Rite Freemason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, you'll find this if you do the research. And so a lot of atheists think that they're safe being outside of what they call organized religion. And it's like, well, I really hate to tell you, but you're still under that Jesuitical system. And
well, modern day atheism is a result of rationalism. Rationalism is a creature of the Jesuits, according to Luigi de Santis in his work Pope Repusiism and Jesuitism that he wrote in the 1850s. So the atheists really have a Jesuitical religion. The Jesuits love atheism. That's why they impose communism. Communism is based upon an atheistic religion. Mm-hmm. The Jesuits used Francis Cardinal Spellman to put Mao Zedong in power in 1949 with the State Department that he controlled. They used their various agents to put Joseph Stalin in power with the Bolshevik Revolution, ultimately the purges in the 30s. They used FDR to formally recognize the USSR in 1933. One of the things he did in the first year he was put in office. So FDR was overseen by Jesuit Edmund Walsh. So everything that FDR did had his blessing and had the oversight of Jesuit Walsh, which includes the financing and bringing major corporations into USSR in the 30s, including Ford. So the Jesuits are the masters of atheism. Their communist governments are atheistic. The Jesuits run all the communist governments, including this communist government here in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I'm going to read a quote here from a book just to kind of further show all this. Let me see if I can get that. Did you ever see this book before?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I actually got this down at the Clay Bookstore.
Ah.
You know where that is? I'm
Yep.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
This is page 74. They say we are taught by the words of the gospel that in this church and under its control there are two swords, the spiritual and the temporal. Both of these, that is, the spiritual and the temporal swords, are under the control of the church. The first is wielded by the church. The second is wielded on behalf of the church. The first is wielded by the hand of the priest. The second by the hand of kings and soldiers, but at the wish and by permission of the priests. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, let me see if I can get that.
That is actually a very close quotation of Unum Sanctum, which was 1302. It's a papal bull in 1302. And that's where they defend the temporal and spiritual power of the Pope, almost word for word there. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I have here, I actually have a copy of the Dewey Reams, the New Testament, put out by the Catholic Church. And I just did a video. I'll talk about this in a minute. There's a Louisiana police captain right now that is getting some popularity because he's putting out videos saying he's going to go after gangs and hunt them down because they're heathen and all this. And he's a papist, just incredible. Did a video on him yesterday.
Probably a Knight of Columbus.
Yeah, it might be. I'm not sure. But down here, page 557. They said, I had referenced this, but I didn't show this. I didn't have it with me at the time, but I'll just read this to further, illustrate the point. It says, the Protestants foolishly, this is the footnotes on Revelation 17, I should say that. The Protestants foolishly expounded of Rome, the shedding of blood of martyrs, for that there they put heretics to death and allow of their punishment in other countries, but their blood is not called the blood of saints, no more than the blood of thieves, man-killers, and other malefactors, for the shedding of which by order of justice no commonwealth shall answer. So I've showed that in other videos, but I'll show this.
Yeah, that's important because, see, they are validating their doctrine of killing heretics. And remember, according to the Jesuits, there is no salvation without the shedding of the blood of the heretic.
Yeah.
And by any means necessary. Any means.
Yeah.
So that means we're going to use the medical inquisition like they've had for the last 80 years here and kill 100 million people with their medical profession, their allopathic medical profession. It's all an inquisition.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I've seen that within my own family. I mean, it's just incredible. But I think they have control of the Protestants pretty much across the board. I would say that, unless there's some kind of an independent one someplace, they might not there, but most of them have been controlled. And of course, using military tactics, of course, one would be disarmament. And spiritually speaking, they're taking away the King James Bible, which we discussed earlier.
That's right.
Replace
or
it
the
with...
Or the Luther Bible, or any other Bible that is a Reformation Bible in the hands of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually have another thing here, which this is always fun to show to Jehovah's Witnesses when they come. I ask them if they know what a Jesuit is. And of course, 90% of the time they say, "Oh, what's a Jesuit?" I actually have this here. This is a Nestle's 25th edition put out by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And right here, let's see if I can get this on camera.
Yeah, they got the Jesuits right there. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Eberhard Nessel, yeah. And what was it? Eberhard Nessel, including these Spanish Jesuit scholar Jose Maria Bovier and A. Merck. Yep. UBS Tech, 1975. Oh, the United Bible Society was totally taken over by the Jesuits.
Mm-hmm. And, I show people, too, that, we can keep going off about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but Vatican II, I have that. It talks about making translations with separated churches and things.
Yeah.
The
talks about a new world order in there, too, new international authority.
Yeah.
Yep, and the one who was the editor of it was Avery Dulles. Avery Dulles was a Jesuit. He was a son of John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State. Yes, he was a nephew of Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA, and also Avery Dulles was a Knight of Malta.
Wow. I recognize the name Dulles, but I never heard his name before. Interesting.
Whenever you go through Dulles Airport, just think of the Jesuits with Avery, John Foster, and Allen Dulles.
And you have also the Nestle's text, the modern editions of it, where one of the editors was Carlo Maria Martini.
Martini, another Jesuit.
Another Jesuit, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So, it's incredible. But what I'm seeing more and more as time goes by, they just seem to be coming out and they're getting more and more bold, where they really don't even cover up things anymore. They just, I really feel that they're trying to openly take over this country. I mean, they've pretty much taken over it, but openly coming out and just saying, here we are, this is what we're going to do.
Remember, they've taken this country since March 9th, 1933.
Mm-hmm.
That's when March 6th, FDR put forward his Proclamation 2039, declaring a state of national emergency, premised on the Trading with the Enemy Act. So he used the Trading with the Enemy Act that was never intended to be used domestically. It was only for World War I. So he used that as a springboard for his Proclamation 2039. And then 3 days later on the 9th, Congress approves and confirms that declaration of an emergency and war. And they approve and confirm it with their Emergency Banking Relief Act. And then FDR comes out later that day with his Proclamation 2040 that continues Proclamation 2039. So we've been under Trading with the Enemy Act and the Emergency Banking Relief Act is an amended Trading with the Enemy Act, and then also the Proclamation of FDR 2040. So we've been under military government since that day, and we've been under military jurisdiction since April 25th, 1938. That's why every flag you see in every courtroom has gold fringe, every flag in every school is gold fringe, every hotel flag, you name it, it's all gold fringe, which is a military color pursuant to Army Regulation 840-10. So we've been under their military government all this time. They've got us involved in all these foreign wars to fight and destroy these nations, to make them subject to the Pope. And now it's our turn to be a victim of that design. So I'm completely convinced they're going to use Donald Trump to put Hellcat Hillary in power. And so that she can appoint these new justices and whatever, maybe even declare their martial law that they want to do. But I have no doubt that they're orchestrating both sides because they control the Republican Democratic Party for their own benefit.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I found it interesting, though, that Donald Trump's also Jesuit trained.
Jesuit trained at Fordham, and he's also 33rd degree Freemason.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're going to recover from 3 or 4 bankruptcies without being in with the big boys, restoring your credit in New York. And all those guys are the Knights. The Knights of Malta run the big banks.
Wow. Now, I have a question on that as far as, I know you have different terms of it. Jesuit temporal coadjutor. Coadjutor, okay. Would you consider somebody that goes through a Jesuit education, would they be considered a Jesuit, or do you consider them just Jesuit trained?
They're just Jesuit trained and generally working with the order, although they're not a Jesuit, they may profess of the 3rd vow, but they're definitely not of the 4th. So they've never taken any priestly vows, but they are working for the Jesuits as their agents. Men like Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, every Bowmansman is a Jesuit coadjutor. Every political man that's went through Georgetown University is a Jesuit coadjutor. Same way with Fordham in New York, same way with Boston College, Loyola in Chicago, Loyola in New Orleans. All their graduates that they put in places of government, banking and so on, are all working for the Jesuits.
Right. What about the spook world, military intelligence and things?
Oh yes, the Jesuits control the Pentagon. The Pentagon was created in 1941, built about that time, and the contractor that built it was a Knight of Malta from Philadelphia named John McShane. So John McShane was the contractor that built it, and it's always a Knight of Malta that's ahead of it or the right hand of it. Some of your early Knights of Malta that ran the Pentagon were Allen Dulles, and you have William J. Casey, Knight of Malta, trained by Jesuits at Fordham. You have George J. Tenet, Knight of Malta, trained by Jesuits at Georgetown. You have Leon Panetta, Knight of Malta, trained by Jesuits at Santa Clara University. So the entire spook world, J. Edgar Hoover, 33rd degree Freemason, but the guy who really ran the FBI at the time was Cartha DeLoach. At the time of the Kennedy assassination, Cartha DeLoach was a Knight of Malta. He retired, went to work for PepsiCo. So all the big knights are running all the intelligence communities together to Department of Homeland Security. I call it Department of Homeland Security.
Sure.
FBI, CIA, DIA, all of it. They're all run by the Jesuits overseeing it from Georgetown.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that. How do the Knights of Columbus fit into this whole thing?
Knights of Columbus are subordinate to the Jesuits. They're kind of like a hatchet men for the Jesuit order. The Knights of Columbus were created in 1882, and their place of their creation was New Haven, Connecticut, so they could be right near their brother Bonesmen at Yale. So they are the ones that are in banking, politics, military. They're men of power, men of wealth. I mean, Admiral Benson, during World War I, the head of the Navy, the one responsible for getting all the ships overseas in World War I, was a Knight of Columbus. He later became a Knight of St. Gregory. You have a Knight of Columbus that was the head of the Supreme Court in the 1800s. His name was Edward White, involved in some very serious decisions. You have a Knight of Columbus that was the overseer of Woodrow Wilson. His name was Joseph P. Tumulty for 2-year terms of Woodrow Wilson. So they put an apostate Protestant Presbyterian in there, but they have the Knights of Columbus running him, and he's being run by James Cardinal Gibbons out of Baltimore. So the Knights of Columbus are busy manning the empire with its entertainment, economics, academia, politics, religion. Only Catholics can be Knights of Columbus, but Catholics and Protestants can be both high-level Freemasons. And the unification of all this is in the Bush family. You have Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is a 4th-degree Knight of Columbus, involved in running the drug trade out of Florida. That's right, working with the mafia.
Yeah.
You got George W., who's Skull and Bones, his brother.
Mm-hmm.
You got his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, he's Skull and Bones. You got his uncle, Prescott Bush Jr., he's the Knight of Malta. All these various knighthoods and brotherhoods dovetail completely with the Bush family. And the Bush family was intimately involved with the assassination of Scalia just recently through the Poindexter people, because John Poindexter is very much connected with the Bush people. So,
So somebody that would make it to the 4th degree level in the Knights of Columbus, would they be? How do you make it up to that high?
Well, you have to be in for a while, but then you have to be asked to join the 4th, and the 4th degree is essentially the bloody vow of the Jesuit order, their 4th degree. So they'll kill heretics, liberals, and overthrow governments for this purpose of restoring the temporal power of the Pope anyway.
Interesting.
Well, what you said is very important. You see, the Jesuit order is a military order. The Knights of Columbus, a military order. The White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, a military order. It was in 1915, the second Klan, not the first Klan. The Skull and Bonesmen, it's a military order. So there's all military. They're the new Knights Templars that were suppressed by the Pope in 1312. So the Jesuits are the revived Knights Templars.
And basically, the idea there for the Vatican would be then to have kind of a building an army, almost like a militia for the Vatican, so to speak, Minutemen for the Vatican that could rise up at some point in time.
That's correct. And you see, they're the leaders. All the guys underneath them are, tens of thousands, but these guys are the leaders, the men of real power.
Yeah. Wow. I was trying to think of another thing I was going to ask here. My wife wrote a question down here. What are the Jesuit degrees? You said about the 3rd, 4th, or the vows or something. What's
there are
that?
4 vows.
4 vows.
Many Jesuits take the first 3 vows, and they're called professed. Professed of the 3rd vow, professed of the 4th vow. And most Jesuits are professed of the 3rd vow. I mean, they are a cadaver for the Pope, no matter what. They're a cadaver for their superior, really, because you see, the Jesuit order is outside of the Roman Catholic Church. No Jesuit is subject to a priest, a cardinal, bishop, archbishop, anybody within the Catholic Church. They're only subject to their immediate superior. So there are 4 degrees, 4 vows, and the Jesuit is subject to his superior. The superior is subject to the provincial is subject to the assistant, and the assistant, and there are 10 of them, assistants are subject to the Jesuit General or the Black Pope himself. So it's strictly a military order with rank and file, chain of command.
So the 4th vow would be then, you wouldn't just get to that very easily. That'd be more of a...
No. M.F. Cusack says in her book, The Black Pope, that it takes 31 years to be professed of the 4th vow. But I know of other Jesuits who would profess to the fourth vow without being in for 31 years. Because remember, it takes 15 years of education after high school to become a Jesuit. So
really?
you don't get in the Jesuit order until you're like in your 30s. But you're completely versed in all subjects. So that if you were dropped in any country, you could immediately take it over with its economics, politics, military, whatever. You're versed in how to do that.
Huh. That's very interesting. Now, another question I have, because this kind of relates a little bit more to what's going on right now, and I believe that because the Protestant denominations have been taken over, I think that Bible-believing Christians are really the new target for infiltration. And
especially the King James men.
yes.
They're the ones they want to attack.
Yeah. And it's...
So they use Jesuits like Martin Richland and others like him.
You think he's a Jesuit?
I know he is.
Yeah?
I have no doubt that he was. He prepared for it. He said he wanted to be a Jesuit.
That's right.
And everything he does stinks of Jesuit casuistry. Everything.
I wondered that.
He endeared himself to me, pretended he really liked me, endeared himself to me. I advocated his work only to find out he was an arch heretic and did everything he could to discredit me. Yep. So he's a military man.
Yeah, I got that kind of feeling from him. I mean, that spirit there, it's just not right. It's not just a brother that I would have some disagreements with. There's a different spirit there. Very interesting. But on that note, there's a guy I mentioned earlier, Captain Clay Higgins down in Louisiana, and he's a policeman, and he's coming out with these videos openly threatening gang members. You know, we're going to hunt you down, you're heretics, you're heathen. We're going to give you chances for redemption when you come to my jail. I mean, it sounds like Inquisition here. I mean, it's incredible.
It says New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Jesuits run New Orleans. They've run New Orleans for, well, at least 200 years. Remember the Clay Shaw, the whole thing of trademark New Orleans was absolutely Jesuit run, and he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. You have Jim Garrison. He's the New Orleans district attorney there, and he's absolutely thwarted in the prosecution of Clay Shaw, who was a Knight of Malta, who was an intimate friend of the Dame of Malta, Lindy Boggs. She lived in New Orleans too. It was Hale Boggs' wife. Hale Boggs was murdered because he said Oswald never shot anybody. He was on the Warren Commission. Hale Boggs. So now
Louisiana.
New Orleans is completely in the hands of the Jesuits through Loyola University in New Orleans.
Yeah. But I found it interesting. He did a video a little while ago here promoting it as some kind of a website. He's selling gear and things like this, military type of gear. And he does this, it's propaganda, you know, and he comes walking out and he sits down on his front porch and he's got the Bible laying there on his porch swing and big statue of Mary beside him. And, it was a King James Bible. And I thought, now I've talked to Catholics, they're not allowed to read the King James Bible. You know, I mean, when they get to be older,
it's still on the list of forbidden books.
Yeah.
Of the Holy Office of Inquisition. Expurgatus, purging of the books. Just like the 9th edition of Encyclopedia Britannica. That's on the forbidden books.
Yeah.
So there's 11 pages on the Jesuits.
No, boy. Can't have that. But, you know, I found that interesting because I thought, you know, here you have a Roman Catholic posing like he has a King James Bible and he reads it, you know. I thought that kind of further adds to my suspicion that they're really trying right now very hard to get into the King James only Bible believing movement and kind of come in and sow some division. And
yeah, they come in with the King James Bible, but you have to listen very carefully to their doctrines. They know how to they know the lingo, but what's this heresy like establishment commandment? That was Richling's big heresy. That's work salvation. It's entirely work salvation. So you have to delve in very carefully what is their doctrine. Then you can find it. Then you can attack them.
Yeah.
And defeat them.
Yeah. And that's another question I have, because I know that the Jesuits, in some of their vows and things, they say that they can even speak against their own church.
Of course.
But is there a level to which are there certain things that they will not speak against because it relates to the military power there?
No. If they're told to do it, they'll do it. You had Teilhard de Chardin, who was a French Jesuit. He went against certain of the things the Pope said, but he was told to, because Teilhard de Chardin is the father of the New Age movement, the Jesuitical New Age movement. So the Vatican openly is against it. They'll be openly against the Pope, but secretly they're behind it. Remember, the Vatican always has this policy. It has an open but false policy. Then it has a secret but true policy. You always have to look at everything they say like that. What is the Pope saying? Well, Pope John Paul II said, well, we're against the war in Iraq. Secretly, his Knights of Malta here caused it with 9/11. So they have an open but false. Openly, we're against abortion. Secretly, they never are against it. They never stop any abortion legislation. So we always, it's a two-headed Janus. We always look at it for what it's saying and then what it really means privately and what its doctrine is.
Yeah. Well, I've found, where I start questioning somebody is when I start to see some of the shades of Roman Catholic, teaching coming through, where you have replacement theology, because that's a big thing that relates to the military structure of the Vatican, the Jesuit order, because of course they want to rule the world from Jerusalem, which is Bible prophecy coming true. They'll also change the identification of Mystery Babylon back in Revelation 17. I've seen that as well.
Tex Mars does that.
Yeah, Stephen Anderson.
Yeah, both Jesuit co-jurors, no doubt.
Yeah, I believe
challenge
that.
Mars to a debate, not taking it.
Yeah, yeah, they'll go on Alex
Jones.
Jones.
The same thing with Anderson too.
Yeah. And another one which has become more and more clear to me over the years has been this post-trib belief system, where they're saying that the church has to go through and be purified and all this other stuff, and I know
that's work salvation, brother.
Right? Yeah.
It's Arminian work salvation, and so that completely shows that it's just completely Jesuitical. If they do not believe the church is the spotless and chaste virgin of Christ, pursuant to 2 Corinthians 11 or Ephesians chapter 1, there's nothing we have to go through. We've been declared righteous. If they say anything other than that, then they are work salvation heretics.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about it, if the rapture happens, and you're a Catholic, and we'll just say that they teach it for a minute, it would totally destroy their own doctrine, because you have purgatory. Well, if you go right to be with the Lord, what do you do with purgatory? No.
That's right.
It's
money-making doctrine of purgatory.
Sure.
The only reason the Pope came up with that, to make money.
Yeah.
As Luther rightfully exposed.
Right. But I've seen this thing where these guys will come out and they'll sound legitimate for a while, and then you start to see these kind of Catholic undertones coming in there, and I know I've called a lot of these people. I've come out and openly said, he acts like a Jesuit, or he talks like a Jesuit, and I get people saying, oh, you're just conspiratorial and whatever else, but it's right there.
It's right there. It's just if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's got to be a duck. And it's their hard conclusions. But like Joel Osteen, he's a Jesuit co-juror out of Houston. Don't think for 1 minute he can't pack that place out without the men of power in Houston, or the Pope making that happen.
Yeah.
All your major quote-unquote TV evangelists are like that. Every one of them.
Rick Warren come out and said he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So, yeah.
Rick Joyner, all those guys. I even have to go so far as John MacArthur. He's another one. Denies blood redemption as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So therefore, and what's he doing on Larry King? Huh?
Yeah.
That Jewish Freemason working for the Pope. What's he doing on that program? He wouldn't have you on, wouldn't have me on, would he?
No.
So, no, all these big guys, quote-unquote big guys, but popularity or whatever, they're absolute Jesuit co-jurors. Because they will not deal with the topic of the Jesuits. That's another topic. That's the thing. That's the thing a Jesuit will not do. He will not go into detail about the power of the Jesuit order, how it got there, its past. They'll never deal with the revocation of Edict of Nantes or Bartholomew's Massacre, the 30 Years' War, the Jesuits involved in Japan. They'll never go into those histories, because what happens is, the question is, are they the same? Have they ever changed? And the answer is absolutely not. Just like Jesuit Lorenzo Ricci said, let them be as they are, or else not be. Nothing changes with them. It's the same game.
Well, then I would definitely say that would probably be one of the better ways, another tip-off, so to speak, when you're watching a ministry. If they're not talking much about the Jesuits and really exposing them, I think that's kind of and you start to see some of this other stuff, I think that's a good indication, that there's some...
I mean, look at Europe. the head of the central bank in Europe is Mario Draghi. Mario Draghi was Jesuit trained. He's not a Malta. Now, why doesn't Bill O'Reilly or those other people, and Chris Matthews and those other papal knights, tell you that on the news? Because they don't want you to know the Jesuits, after they decimated Europe and destroyed the Reformation out of Europe in the Second 30 Years' War from 1914 to 45, they don't want you to know that they completely reorganized it under a papal power in preparation for a dictator that they're bringing to power, justified by the Muslim invasion that they've caused into Europe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's all about.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, actually. I saw there was a lot of videos on YouTube. I was looking at some of them, and I didn't even look at the channel name, and it was like all these videos really getting people riled up about, you know, the Syrian Arabs are raping German women and things, and you know, I'm sure that's going on, but it was like really inciting, you know, hatred and violence. And I looked at the channel name; it was In Hoc Signo Vinces.
Oh yes.
I was like,
in this sign conquer. That was
Yeah.
was a byword of the Knights Templars.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
I just thought-
so they're doing just like said in the past. They're creating this common enemy for all the white people of Europe that are now absolutely apostate and infidels, than to drive them into the arms of some dictator that the Pope of Rome will control.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. It's a bad situation, but
They're doing the same thing here. They're going to foment a black on white race war. That's why they have all the welfare. So we have huge black populations in the major cities and teach them to hate the white people. We'll put out all these movies like Django and all the others to teach them to hate white people. Then we'll have the black Muslims and other Masonic orders to incite them to race war as they controlled all the major riotings back in the 1960s. And then all of a sudden, departments of Homeland Security will come to the rescue, and then they'll declare martial law and shut it down and bring out the guillotines and off to the camps. So that's why I should tell my black friends, all the big black all leaders are Masonic, and they're betraying you.
mm-hmm.
So I believe that's what their game is right now in the major cities. And if they're using Trump, although everything that he says is generally true, it's playing upon the grievances of white people in general over the last 80 years. He is like a Hitler. Hitler played on the same thing. There were legitimate grievances of the Germans. Treaty of Versailles was wicked, but that's going to justify giving him lots of attention. But I'm tending to think that ultimately all the Republicans will break from him and support Hillary. That's what the game is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll see.
Because that's his purpose. Because Hillary was good to Bill. She didn't divorce him over all the things that he did when he was president. I'm convinced they promised her, listen, you stick with Bill, we'll make you president down the road. So I think this is payback time, and she knows it. They ran the most ridiculous opponent against her, that Masonic Jew, socialist communist out of Vermont. What's his name? It'll lose me right now, but he's absolutely worthless. And she'll have the Democratic nomination.
Was it Lieberman?
So
was it Lieberman?
No, not Lieberman. It's what's his name, Eric? He's out of Vermont. His headquarters is in the Masonic Lodge in Burlingame. High-level Jewish Freemason. Yeah, he defended Eugene Debs, was a notorious Jewish communist years ago. Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
So they ran the worst possible candidate against Hillary to make sure she wins the Democratic convention, and then she'll face off with Trump, and then probably there'll be either Trump will either be going to his own party or stay with the Republicans. The Republicans will break and probably back Hillary, but I'm convinced that somehow, some way, they're going to put Hellcat Hillary in, not Donald Trump.
I know that a lot of times the way they work the thing is they let the Democrats have it for a little bit, and then they bring in a quote-unquote conservative Republican, you know. I was figuring they'd do that again, but you might be right. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, either way they win, Trump's not going to change anything. They're still going to be under military government, military jurisdiction, and he'll do what the Jesuits of Fordham tell him to do, because the Fordham Jesuits would tell Trump what to do in New York.
Yeah.
By the way, he lives on the 66th floor of his skyscraper hotel. 66? And it's worth $100 million worth of furnishings. I mean, that's more than the cost of the building. And it was designed by an Italian-American Roman Catholic after the design of Louis XIV, the King of France. Louis XIV was totally in the hands of the Jesuits. He built Versailles overseen by his Knight of Malta, Colbert. And then Louis XIV drove out all the French Huguenots, all the French Protestants out of France in 1685 with the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. 500,000 died, 500,000 left, and populated Switzerland and Britain and came to this country. They settled in the Carolinas. But all of this was done by the Jesuit Sun King, Louis XIV, of which Donald Trump absolutely loves.
Very interesting stuff. I think I have a few other questions here. Another thing I had talked to you about a little bit before, the IHS symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Is that another thing that Christians should be aware of when they see the IHS, if they go to a church someplace or wherever, or if they see it? Is that usually an indication of Jesuit influence
Absolutely.
there?
Sure. Remember, IHS is the seal of the Jesuit Superior General. That's Loyola's seal that every general has maintained. And it also ultimately goes back to the Templars and this side and conqueror. But they say it means Jesus, the Savior of mankind, in Latin. But the real meaning I maintain is it's Isis, Horus, Set. And so it's Isis, the woman, Horus is the child that comes out of the woman, and Set is the devil in Egyptian mythology. So Set will possess Horus. It's exactly what the Bible says. That the coming Antichrist will die, come back to life, be possessed by the devil. And he comes out of the Holy Mother Church. I maintain every pope's an Antichrist. The papacy is the dynasty of the Antichrist. And the final pope of Rome, to be slain and rise from the dead, will be the Antichrist.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe the same.
Reformers were close, but not quite close enough.
Yeah. And another one there, I don't know if I don't have the picture here with me, but it's let me show you here. It's kind of a little rough drawing of it here. See if I can get this thing like that.
Yep, I see it.
It's like a little butterflies or something in between this triangle with the circles on the corners. I saw a banner of that in a Lutheran church, and I mean, did you ever see that symbol before?
Never have. It's got the IHS in the center, though.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah, wherever, that's the telltale. Of course, the equilateral triangle has always been Rome's symbol. I have on my PowerPoint, my Conspiracy Conference PowerPoint, I have at least 10 Roman Catholic cathedrals with the equilateral triangle on their churches, on their temples, I should say. So that's always been their symbol. The Jesuits took that symbol and put it in Freemasonry, and then it's on the dollar bill since 1935.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's their symbol.
Could there be different? I mean, within the Jesuit system, could there be different like sub orders within that, or is it pretty much just Jesuits or Jesuits?
No. The low-level Jesuits know nothing of what's going on. It's like the Masons. The low-level Jesuits are educators, administrators, many of them doing the right thing and what they feel is the right thing. I know a couple of them. I know one passed away a few years ago. He talked about Jesuit spirituality, but when I talked to this Jesuit, his name was Brother Sutz. He's since passed away. He's buried over at the spiritual center here about 10 miles away.
Warnersville.
Not far from here. And so, Warnersville.
Yeah.
And so, Brother Sutz, I told him, I said, listen, Walter Ciszek was a Jesuit inquisitor. He went to the novitiate there, then he was ordained and invited. And the heads of New York City, including Genevieve Brady, Nicholas Brady, were his sponsors into the order. And he went into Europe in 1939, about the time Hitler invades Poland, and he goes to the Russian side. Well, he and a Russian Jesuit are together, and then when Stalin invades Poland 17 days later, Walter Ciszek and a Russian Jesuit go to Moscow. And they're supposedly arrested as Jesuits, but secretly, Walter Ciszek is tutored in the art of torture for 5 years in Lubyanka. Lubyanka had a library in it of many books from the Spanish Inquisition, where they learned to torture the Russian Orthodox people. And so after his 5 year of tuition, of teaching there, then he went out to be a foremost Jesuit in the Gulag. And Kennedy brought him back on a spy exchange. in 1963, and Brother Suds was there, the Jesuit Sudzina. And I said, tell me, Brother Suds, I said, when they brought Cizik back, I said, were his fingers gnarled? Did he look like he was underweight? And he said, no, he didn't. I said, he looked in fine health, didn't he? Because I've seen the pictures. He said, yes, he did. I said, Brother Suds, Walter Cizik was a Jesuit inquisitor. He killed millions of Russian people that were Orthodox, heretics, in the light of the Vatican. And Suds sat there and he said, oh, Walter. Oh, Walter. And I know he believed me. So that, then right there I knew that there were low-level Jesuits that mean well. Because Sudzina took care of the grounds there out in the novitiate. But there are the high Jesuits, the men of power. In fact, in 2000, I drove out there to the novitiate. I was taking my future wife at the time out there to show her. Nice place to take your wife, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, there was about 50 Jesuits and all black Cossacks. And there he was, Peter Hans Kolvenbach. I said, I probably ought to get out of here because I don't think I should stay around. But
No.
there he was, and he was anointing the grave of Walter Cizik.
Oh, boy.
The only Jesuit to get that kind of attention, meaning that he had to be a high-level killer inquisitor to get that kind of praise. So the low-level Jesuits don't know much, but the high Jesuits absolutely they know. All the 10 provincials in America know. The Jesuit presidents of all the Jesuit universities know. That's 28 of them. And so there's probably 50 to 100 Jesuits that are really the men of power in North America. The low-level ones really don't know much.
Another question. Ak-Sar-Ben. Have you heard of that?
What is it?
Ak-Sar-Ben. It's Nebraska spelled backwards, but it's an organization out there in mostly in Omaha, Nebraska. If you know about Omaha, the Boys Town thing out there.
Yeah. Cardinal Spellman oversaw that.
Yeah, but there's I think it's yearly that they have this Ak-Sar-Ben ball, and it's the kind of the rich elite of Omaha. Well, the Omaha and the surrounding areas, over into Iowa and everything. My wife's from that area, and they have this elaborate ball, and they have an older businessman, and he'll be crowned as the king, and then they have a young, probably in her teens, late teens girl, and she's crowned as the queen, and they actually have a Catholic bishop that presides over the thing. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've never heard of it, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Because the Catholic Archbishop of San Francisco oversees Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is 86 miles north of the University of San Francisco, where the Jesuits have their university there. That Anton LaVey used to speak there regularly. That good Catholic boy. And it doesn't surprise me at all. They have their orgies, they have all that stuff going on. Tom Cruise put a movie out years ago called Eyes Wide Shut with the producer of it. What was his name? He was an out of Malta. There was one big orgy in the house in the Rothschild mansion in Great Britain. They rented that mansion for the movie. And so it happens all the time, and it keeps these men in sexual sin and impurity so that they will always be submitted to the order. They will not be able to get out.
Well, what about Greek fraternities and sororities?
That's the beginning. The fraternities and sororities are the beginning. In fact, Code Word Babylon, the first volume deals with sororities and fraternities, even though I don't agree with his Adventist thing, and he's saying that America was created by Jesuits and George Washington was a Jesuit. That's all nonsense, but he does deal very well with the Jesuit oversight of the fraternities and sororities.
So, in other words, somebody could go to a non-Jesuit university, go through the Greek sorority fraternity thing, and then later go on into, I don't know how you'd even say that, but they could, eventually get it tied up with the Jesuit order.
It'll go to some secret society that's subject to the Jesuits, like Yale. I mean, you have the Skull and Bones. You have with the snake and what's the other one? The snake and something. And all these little secret societies in the universities, and these are in the dossiers of the men who graduate, and then they're chosen in the major corporations to go to work there or in politics or whatever, because the Council on Foreign Relations is full of these secret societies. So the CFR runs the federal government, but they're appointed there by men in secret societies who know they're trustworthy. So it's the extent of the massiveness of this conspiracy is huge.
Yeah.
But all we want to go is right to the center and the heart of it, the Jesuit order and the secret societies that it controls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Found a thing interesting. I was doing a little bit of research into this. I don't know. I haven't read your whole book yet. I can only read, it's online or like it's on the computer, and I can't read a whole lot on the computer.
Only stands so much of that.
Yeah. So I've printed out parts of it and things, and read it that way. Eventually, I'm probably just going to print it out. I can read it that way. I'm not used to online reading, or computer reading, I should say. But I don't know if you have covered this at all. But I found the assassination of Empress Elizabeth in Austria, right around the late 1800s.
Oh yes, Sissy. She was called Sissy.
Yeah.
Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought
she was. Yeah, I have it in my book.
Oh, really?
That she was a beautiful woman too. She was the greatest equestrian in Europe, and she was the dear friend of Ludwig II, crazy Ludwig, out of Bavaria, who designs Ludendorff and Neuschwanstein Castle. Beautiful castles. Okay. Just it's the castle that Walt Disney patterned his castle after in Disneyland.
Okay.
So, yes, they killed Ludwig II. They shot him in the back twice. And I have that documented in my book from a Bavarian contact that I had. He did not drown. They shot him in the back twice. And then, because Sissy, she was trying to protect him. Because Sissy would not go along with a lot of the anti-Jewish fury that was going on in the 1800s at the time. Because remember, they were building their Jewish question fury from 1880s on. And she wasn't going along with it. So they killed Ludwig II, and then they killed Sissy.
Yeah.
She was knifed through the heart with a triple-sided file that had been sharpened by the assassin. And as he walked by her, he shoved it and pricked her heart. She was walking with a Rothschild lady. And notice they didn't kill the Rothschild. They killed her. And she went back to her mansion then and ultimately passed away. That's how they killed Sissy. It's all in my book. I have the pictures here too.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to read that part. It just seemed kind of suspicious from what I was reading, because I thought, this guy just kind of walks up and stabs her, and he's just kind of it's that lone gun thing again, Yeah,
it's typical
like,
Jesuit assassination.
Mm-hmm. Thought it was interesting too that one of the pages in her court ended up later becoming the Jesuit, what was it, Wuczynski or something? I think. Head of the Jesuit order there I think it was
Lerichowski.
Was it?
Lerichowski had a cardinal uncle. Yes. So, yeah, probably Lerichowski. Lerichowski was a general from 1950 to 1942.
Okay. So, was there a Wuczynski, though? Jesuit general?
Not that I can remember.
Okay.
There was a Wurtz, Francis Xavier Wurtz. There was a few others, but not Wuczynski. Let's see here.
Maybe I read that wrong.
Let me see. Richie. Max Martin. Nope. At the time of Sissy, it would have been Peter Jean Bex, 1853 to 1887. And but Peter Jean Bex was the tutor of Karl Marx in the British Museum teaching him communism. Bex was the tutor of Marx for communism. So just the Jesuits created communism. Marx is a 33rd degree Jewish Freemason. Any Jewish Freemason is always somehow, some way connected to the Pope. Like Morris Dees of the Southern Poverty Law Center, of which I'm going to be interviewed by the Lebanon Daily News in about 15 minutes about him. He has attacked me. So I said, okay, we'll deal with Morris Dees.
Yeah. Well, we'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
But, well, I definitely don't want to hold you up for your upcoming interview. Sounds like a interesting one coming up for you.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you right now. Just
remember, they control the political parties. They control the intelligence communities. They control the military. Anybody in the military that disobeys, they relieve him like crystal. Anybody who does what they were supposed to do, they stay in power. So, I mean, that's the power that they wield today here, and this is the heart and soul of the Jesuit order's military and commercial complex to reduce all nations to the temporal power of the Pope. That when they're finished using us, then they will conquer this place and put us under military government, open the camps, and do what they intend to do pursuant to the Council of Trent. May the Lord help us to stop it.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do this. One other question: a PhD educated Jesuit, they go through the Jesuit school or whatever, and they come out with a PhD. Could they continue? I mean, are they? I don't want to say it. Would they be considered a lower level, or if you get to the PhD level in a Jesuit school, are you going to come out a little bit higher level, or?
They'll be higher because they're going to know how they can use their PhD. Like Norman Geisler, he was trained by Jesuits at Loyola in Chicago.
Oh, really?
He was a PhD. Norman Geisler went to teach at Dallas Theological Seminary. So,
yeah,
they know what they're about.
Yeah. He endorses James White's book Against the King James.
Is that right?
Yep.
Geisler does that.
I think I think it's right on the front cover, actually. I think his endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
So
that shows you Geisler is working for the Jesuits too. Shows you Dallas is totally destroyed and infiltrated. Done.
Yeah.
When it used to be pretty good with Schaefer and a couple of those other guys, was totally gone.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll bring this to an end. Thank you very much for your time, brother. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure to be on with you, Brian. Lord bless you, and Lord bless your listeners and viewers.
All right. Well, we will check in with you some other time in the future, and if I can come up with some more questions for you. So.
Sure, brother. Anytime.
Okay. Well, may the Lord bless you, and we'll be praying for your interview.
Thank you. Lord bless you too, Brian.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.